And regardless of my concerns at the U13 level and what the U15s are doing and could do better or differently, the performance of the under 18 AAA team uh, was mind boggling for me. They're doing everything I hoped for. They're looking, they're managing the puck, all the evasive team tactics, engagement in the play, interchange of positions. Uh, I think everybody has to get out and watch the AAA team because we're definitely preparing athletes to think the game better, play the game better. When they do get to that level and perform like that, it's a product of what they've done from that point on. I know one thing I want to mention, Jordan, the relationship that Kyle has with you and um, Ben, the U18 coaches. It's a synergistic kind of exchange of ideas, and you're all there developing the girls the right way to move forward and get better. And it's a real payoff that I can see going on, which I believe is an association that you want to see. And I'm really glad just to be a part of observing it and taking advantage of the expertise of the people that have been there and done that and are still trying to do it, like you, Richard, and Tom, and Rick, all of us, in fact. So, Jordan, I did talk about, you might have been on, I really think the U13 coaches would benefit the players more by allowing them to just play varieties of games, numerical, changing the numbers and changing the space, than trying to run the canned deliberate drills that are provided by Researching Drills or Hockey Canada's package. The kids would progress as much or more than through the deliberate practice that isn't necessarily accomplishing that much. It's just repetition, 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 and not necessarily proper repetition to do things correctly. So, uh, my point is, Richard, everything you're doing and Tom's doing, we have to do more of at the U13 level, more decision making at practice, more small area games, more tactical implications of those small area games to benefit the level you're at. Jordan, have you got any thoughts on that? Because you know where I'm coming from, and Tom and Richard are coming from. What's your take on playing more small area competitive games and designing them to accomplish a purpose?
Well, Wally, I'm going to actually go back to something that John was briefly talking about when he was talking about Bobby Orr and Pele and talking about them playing scrimmage or just playing for the fun of it as children. And so that part has kind of disappeared in our society because we have structured so much for our youth. And it was actually kind of interesting that when we had the lockdown or the shutdowns due to COVID, that there were more kids on the ice out on the lake of Chestermere here that winter than I'd ever seen prior and ever seen since. It would have been an interesting study if a person was actually thinking about it to see what that did for development of that age group of kids. Um, yeah, I really like small area games. Use lots of them, and I really love the idea of constraints that Tom uses probably more than any that I've seen or heard of, and using the game to teach that way. The thing that you talked about earlier with the simulated breakout game that I kind of used with Wes's team there. That one was something that I stole from Thomas Pacina that he'd used with the Czechia national women's team there prior to the Olympics. And it is basically a game piece, and you could turn that into a small area game. I have for for simulating breakouts, and actually on the flip side of it, simulating forecheck because you can get the other group that they gain points by being undernumbered and getting the puck back. So yeah, um, I think that there's room for both. I get what Richard's talking about with all the toys on the ice. Because it seemed like I I was watching at the Alberta Challenge. There were some minor pro guys out on the ice prior to one of the ice sessions, and they were already training in the summer, and the person had the danglers out there that were the knockoff of the Power Edge Pro stuff, and just kind of laughing in saying that I don't know how many times those guys are going to run into a piece of plastic out on the ice, but they'll run into each other quite a bit. So when you had that level of competition, they probably would have been better off just playing a smaller game against each other. And that I do get the piece that the kids are going to practice individual skills and they need to in individually, but they also need to be able to apply it in games and think and all those things. So yeah, there's time for blend, but again, going back to what you said right off the top, the important piece of knowing what to teach and how to teach, because not every person on the ice surface is going to need the exact same thing. We have to be able to differentiate that learning for each of those players and understand our players as individuals too.
Richard, I'm glad you put your hand up because I was thinking of you. It's a great time for you to intervene.
Well, I guess everybody's heard of Adam Graves. Remember the great NHLer? And he runs, keeping in mind he's dealing with pros, he runs instructional stuff in Florida and somewhere else. I can't remember where. And he has said, get rid of the toys, all of them. So that's his opinion. Okay, fine. There's a key aspect to, and we're talking about in season, not summer, not spring, in season. And I was a skills guy. I taught the skating and all that other stuff for years and years and years, never in season. When you look at the research that's going on around the world, especially in Europe, but in England and Australia and Finland and Sweden, extensive studies, dozens and dozens and dozens of studies on skill acquisition, ecological approaches, dynamics, and so forth. Read the literature, read the books. Rob Gray in the US is a key one at Arizona State University. He's from Toronto, as a matter of fact. Former goalie. He was on my podcast. There is not one study in any sport that shows that the linear approach and using the toys is actually beneficial. And in studies that are comparing the approaches, particularly in volleyball, basketball, and rugby, which are the ones that I've read, because hockey has not yet done it. The comparison also shows that the non-linear approach, if you want to call it game-like, let's call it game-like, and I agree that a 1 against 1 is a game. 2 against 1 is a game. It doesn't, the terminology is, it doesn't matter what you call it. If you feel you want to call it a game because that's what the players will cotton to, then that's fine. But the research on the benefits of these things, on the importance of scanning that comes across in using small area games, even to a guy named, oh God, now what's his name? Oh, geez. I think he's Dutch. Axum. Was it Callum Axum or something? Who did his PhD on rondos in soccer. Rondos for
Marius Axum.
That's the one. That's the one. Marius Axum. Rondos in soccer are, you have, it's like monkey in the middle, 6 players, 8 players around in a circle with one trying to stop the ball. He did a research study on that and found it was pretty much useless. And he said, soccer coaches should never be doing that. Now, it's even harder in soccer than in hockey. If you have 5 players with a ball, you know, your leg can only extend so far to stop the ball. You have no chance of touching the ball. At least in hockey, you can use your stick. So monkey in the middle in hockey is a lot more effective than a rondo in soccer. The question is how you use it, what skills are you trying to get the kids to apply. So he said rondos, the research was very clear, rondos are a waste of time because the players are not scanning, they're not doing anything that's game-like. Again, remember, we're talking about practice. I sound like, what's his name, the basketball players. Remember a few years ago, we talking about practice? Are we talking about practice? Do you remember that interview? What was the guy's name? Great player. We talking about practice? Yeah, we're talking about 2 practices a week, 3 practices a week. That's why when I did my SEEP presentation, I had all the attributions there. All the statements came from somewhere. It's not just my opinion. All I did, I'm the practitioner. I take all the research that everybody's master's degrees were based on, and I tried to put it together and go, why are you putting pylons out there? Like I watched a guy last night with the players doing the 5 circles, forward to backward, backward to forward, forward to for 10 minutes. Okay, why? Aren't there other things you could do to get your players to do transition skating by having them play a game? Maybe telling them you're going to play this game and every 2 seconds you go from forward to backward. I used to do that all the time when I was teaching skating with little kids. Okay, we'd have a free flow. I called it a chaos drill inside the blue line, inside center ice. You go every which way. Every 2 seconds, you go from forward to backward. Count to yourself. I'm not calling it out. You can all count to 2 or 4. So the research has to be the foundation of how we teach, how we coach, and how we know skills are acquired. In the same way, Jordan, you're a principal. I've been that route while I was a VP. I was lower. I was way down the ladder. But a lot of what we do in education is based on research. You know, how to teach reading, how to teach. Here in Ontario, they're bringing back cursive writing. You know, how we teach math. That's all based on research. It's not because some teacher said, let's do it this way. So hockey has to take that approach. We have to take a more educational approach. Are they going to listen to John the Columbian? No. Why should they? Are they going to listen to me? No. Why should they? But as soon as we